Welcome back to the Sage Audio channel. Today we're looking at how to use spectral, dynamics, and temporal vocal effects. But first, if you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us at sageaudio.com. We'll master it for you for free and send you a sample of it. So first up, let's look at how to use spectral vocal effects. Spectral processing includes anything that immediately affects the frequency spectrum, like both additive and subtractive equalization, and harmonic distortion or excitement. When using vocal effects, these effects should be used first in your signal chain, typically via subtractive equalization to clean up a vocal, followed by mild to moderate distortion. First, let's look at an equalizer. An equalizer can affect the full 20 Hz to 20 kHz frequency spectrum and can be used to amplify or attenuate specific aspects of the vocal. I like to use an equalizer first when affecting a vocal. This way I can attenuate any aspects of the vocal that I don't want. This may or may not include a high-pass filter up to 150 Hz, a Bell filter around 500 Hz, and a smaller Bell filter around 6 kHz to attenuate sibilance. These settings will depend on the vocal and the mix that you're working on, but they should provide you with a good starting point for your vocal. Then I'll use some mild distortion to add some harmonics and fullness to the vocal. Although distortion often has a negative connotation, distorting a vocal can make it more easily perceived since the harmonics make the original frequencies easier to hear. Use a mild amount of distortion and dial it in depending on the genre and your personal preference. If you don't know which distortion type to pick, tube distortion is a great starting place. Also, an exciter can be a good alternative or addition to distortion, but instead of creating harmonics like distortion does, an exciter augments and amplifies any harmonics that are already present in the signal. Let's take a listen to these spectral effects on a vocal.
I'm taking pictures off my wall. I'm casually coming undone. I'll brush my face, then shave my gums and remind myself that I'm not the only one now.
Next, let's talk about how to use dynamics-based vocal effects. Dynamics processing includes any processor that deliberately affects the dynamic range of a signal, including compressors, expanders, de-essers, dynamic equalizers, low-level compressors, and more. Typically, when you're mixing a vocal, you'll use compression, some de-essing, maybe some dynamic equalization, and low-level compression on occasion. After we've used subtractive equalization and some distortion, we'll use a compressor to control the dynamics. This way, any aspect of the vocals that are too loud will be attenuated and the overall dynamic of the vocal will be controlled. When you're using a compressor on a vocal, I'd recommend starting with a 3:1 ratio and trying not to compress more than 6 dB. A quicker attack and longer release will make the vocal sound smoother. A longer attack and shorter release will make the vocal sound a little more aggressive. A de-esser is a lot like a compressor, but one that only affects high frequencies. The point of using a de-esser is to control vocal sibilance, like S sounds, hence the name de-esser. Listen intently to your vocal and pay attention to these high frequencies. If it's sounding harsh whenever an S or similar sound is sung or spoken, then you'll need to use a de-esser. Like compression, try not to have attenuation greater than 6 dB or the effect will become noticeable. You can also use dynamic equalization. This works by attenuating aspects of the vocal at certain frequencies. For example, I could use a dynamic equalizer instead of a de-esser to attenuate sibilance. I'd simply create a band over the high frequencies where the sibilance is located and make that band dynamic. Then I'd affect the range of the dynamic band to control how much of the signal can be attenuated. Lastly, low-level compression is a great way to add body and low-level detail to your vocal. It works by increasing the amplitude of quieter aspects of the signal while keeping the peaks of the signal intact. Now, this is almost the opposite of regular compression, which attenuates the loudest aspects of the vocal. Now, I find that increasing the level of these quieter aspects can really make a vocal sound nuanced and complex. Additionally, it may help the vocals stick out in a busy mix. Let's listen to these effects and pay attention to how they control the dynamics and ultimately make for a balanced but full vocal.
I'm taking pictures off my wall. I'm casually coming undone. I'll brush my face, then shave my gums and remind myself that I'm not the only one now.
Last up, let's talk about how to use temporal vocal effects. Temporal effects are any form of processing that affects the timing of the signal, like reverb, delay, chorusing, echo, and forms of phase shifting modulation. When processing a vocal, you'll typically use reverb, delay, and some form of doubling effect like a chorus or a very short delay. Temporal effects are a lot of fun, but they're best to save for last. When it comes to reverb, there are a lot of good settings that you can use, but I'd recommend using two different reverbs. The first is going to be a short reverb, maybe an ambient reverb or a small room emulation. Also, you might find the preset that's designed for thickening vocals, which would be a good starting point as well. Then, create another reverb send or insert that's medium to large in size for a more stylistic effect. The small reverb will give the vocal some power and a sense of space. The larger one will be used to impress the listener or make the vocal have a sense of importance. A similar concept can be used when you're deciding on delay times. Using a short delay and then a long delay has a similar effect. The short delay gives the vocal power, and the long delay is used for a stylistic effect. Try different types of delays like tape delay, pedal emulation delay, and others to see which timbre suits your vocal the best. Lastly, you can use a very short delay or chorusing plugin to increase the stereo width and the complexity of the vocal. I typically use these effects very subtly and blend the chorus effect in with the original. Depending on the plugins that you're using, you might want to use auxiliary sends for these effects, or if it has a wet dry, you can use that as well. Additionally, it helps to put the reverb time, the delay, the echo, or what have you, in time with the tempo of the track. Some plugins have a sync to the BPM function, but if yours doesn't, just divide 60,000 by your BPM to get the timing of a quarter note in milliseconds. You can use this value, or a multiple of it, for your effects. Let's listen to temporal effects on a vocal after using spectral and dynamics effects.
I'm taking pictures off my wall. I'm casually coming undone. I'll brush my face, then shave my gums and remind myself that I'm not the only one now.
If you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us at sageaudio.com to receive a free mastered sample of it. Also, you can stay up to date by subscribing, and liking the video really helps us out. Lastly, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. We want to hear what you have to say about these effects. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.